$1,300 for the cabin. Royal Caribbean keeps $455. The entire airline industry keeps $450. Same ocean, 100 times the money. So you buy the ship. 2.3 billion euros. Sounds like a hotel. It is not. Last year, for 0.3 billion, it paid 82 million in tax. Because this ship is in no country. Real numbers, real sources. 6 decks down, and your money is on all of them. Deck 1. The cabin is not the product. Every cruise line on Earth sells you the same object. A hotel room that moves, with a window, a bed, and somebody else driving. That room is not where the money is. Royal Caribbean took $17.9 billion last year. $12.5 billion of that was fares. 70% of the money arrives before anybody has stepped onto the ship. The other $5.4 billion happened afterwards, on board, in a place with no competing shop and no way to walk out. 30% of the revenue. Most of the profit. A ship is the only shop on Earth you cannot leave. Start with the drinks package, because almost everybody does. Across the Royal Caribbean fleet, it runs about $84 a person a day. Then 18% gratuity lands on top of it. Over 7 nights, that is $693. Half the fare again, and none of it bought you a single extra mile of ocean. Then the casino, which never closes while the ship is at sea. Then the spa. Then a photographer you did not ask for, selling you back a picture of yourself. Every one of those is a separate business with its own margin. None of it is optional in the way you think it is, because the ship is built as a street. Every corridor ends in something that takes a card, and the card is already linked to your room. Add it up, and each passenger hands over about $1,900. $455 of that is profit. An airline moves you for a living and makes $4.50 doing it. A cruise line rents you a shopping street and makes $455. Deck 2. They bought the beach. A cruise is the only holiday that sells you somewhere to go as part of the price, which means the stop is not a courtesy. It is inventory. So the smartest thing a cruise line can own is not a ship. It is the place the ship stops. Because on somebody else's island, the money you spend ashore belongs to somebody else. In July last year, Carnival opened its own private destination in the Bahamas, and it is not a jetty with a bar on it. $600 million of beach. Another $100 million is going into the pier alone, so 4 ships can dock at once instead of 2. That is the whole point of it. Nothing on that island is a local business. The pier, the beach bar, the cabanas, the water slides, and the lunch are the same company you already paid. You just changed the floor to sand. Royal Caribbean is building the same idea 3 times over. The last one was priced at $800 million. On top of $411 million already spent buying the port next door, because owning the beach is worth less if somebody else owns the way in. And then, in May, Mexico said no. The Environment Ministry refused the permit outright, over the coral, the mangroves, and the second largest reef system on the planet. A petition against it had gathered nearly 5 million signatures. Royal Caribbean withdrew the plan a week later. You can buy a lot of things. You cannot always buy a coastline. And the excursion you booked at the shore desk, the one they warned you not to book independently in case the ship leaves without you, the cruise line's cut of that can run to half. The guide standing in front of you gets the rest. Deck 3. The flag that is not yours. Walk to the back of any cruise ship and read what is painted under the name. That is the home port, and it is a legal statement, not a sentimental one. Nassau, Valletta, Monrovia. Almost never the country you boarded in, and almost never the country the company is actually run from. Out of 325 ocean ships, exactly 1 is registered in the United States. It sails Hawaii all year round and never calls anywhere foreign. That is the only way the arithmetic of a domestic flag still works. The other 324 fly a flag of convenience. And the flag is not decoration. It decides the tax, the labor law, the safety inspector, and which country's court you would have to sue in. Royal Caribbean's ship-owning companies are incorporated in Liberia. Its own annual report says most of its income is exempt from United States tax. That is Section 883. Not a loophole. The law. $4.3 billion in profit. $82 million in income tax, under 2%. This past quarter, it was $14 million on $1.1 billion. The same registry decides who works on board, for how long, and for how much. And the people it decides that for are not the people in the photographs. The international floor for a qualified seafarer is $690 a month. It went up in January, and it goes up twice more by 2028. The convention that governs them permits 14-hour days and 72-hour weeks. Contracts run 6 to 9 months at a stretch, and there is no weekend anywhere inside one. The ship does not have a Sunday. The biggest ship afloat carries 2,350 crew, and their tip is a separate line on your bill. $14.50 to $18 a day per person, added automatically. In February last year, a United States cabinet secretary went on television and said the administration would end all of this and start taxing them properly. Cruise shares fell that afternoon. 18 months later, nothing has passed. Deck 4. What a ship actually costs. So here is the bill you just signed, and it starts before the ship exists, in a yard in Finland or France or Germany. Legend of the Seas came out of the yard in July at 2.33 billion euros. That is the third record breaker in a row, one a year, 3 years running. A hull like that takes about 3 years to build, and there is a queue in front of you that runs into the 2030s. And you cannot shop this. 4 yards on Earth can build a ship this size. Between them, they finish about 10 a year, and 2 of those 4 are merging into one. One rival has just placed 10 billion euros of orders at a single German yard, which tells you exactly how much bargaining power the buyer has here. 77 ships are on order worldwide, 200,000 berths. Then you have to burn something to move 180,000 tons of steel through water every day, all year. Royal Caribbean has budgeted 1.76 million tons of fuel this year, $1.34 billion of it. Jet fuel rose 70% this year and have the world's airline profits. The same shock is about 7% of a cruise line's revenue. Then food. 7,000 people, 3 meals a day, 7 days, plus the crew who feed them and the crew who feed the crew. Then dry dock. Every few years, the whole ship comes out of the water and stops earning for a month while you pay for it. Then the ports, and every single one of them charges you by the body that walks off. Taxes, fees, and port expenses run $100 to $200 a head, a week. Mexico doubled its passenger duty 5 days ago, $5 to $10. It is scheduled to reach $21 by 2028. The Bahamas takes about $30 a passenger in departure taxes and levies, and the Bahamas is where the ships are registered in the first place. And the agent who sold you the cruise takes 10 to 16% of the fare, not of the fees. Those are carved out so nobody earns on them but the line. Deck 5. Do not sink. None of that machine has a pause button. A cruise ship costs almost the same on a day. It carries 7,000 people, and a day it carries nobody. In 2020, the entire industry found that out at the same moment. Every ship in the world stopped inside about 3 weeks. Revenue went to zero. The fixed costs did not move at all. Carnival burned $650 million a month. Every month, for well over a year, with every ship tied up, empty, and still needing power, insurance, and a skeleton crew on board. It borrowed until it owed almost $35 billion. And it sold ships for scrap to stay alive. Not everybody did stay alive. Hentang Hong Kong went insolvent in January 2022, and it took Crystal Cruises down with it inside a fortnight. Passengers stranded, crew unpaid, ships auctioned off. 6 years on, the debt from that year is still on the books. Carnival owes $24.9 billion today. Almost every quarter of the recovery has gone into paying it down, which is why this is a business that only really works completely full, and why the ship sails whether the cabin sold or not. An empty cabin is not a lost sale. It is a lost week, which is why the cheapest fare barely clears cost, and the $5.4 billion comes afterwards. They are not selling you a holiday. They are filling a room. Deck 6. Was it worth it? If this arithmetic is landing, the like button is free, and it genuinely does help this channel reach people who like numbers. Because the strangest part of all of this is that it works, and that the people paying for it come back on purpose. 37.2 million people cruised last year. A record. Nearly 90% of them say they will do it again. Almost a third had never set foot on a ship before. 13 more ships enter service this year alone, and the four biggest companies already control most of what floats. Four of them hold 79% of the berths on Earth. Carnival made $2.8 billion last year and started paying a dividend again. And passengers hand over $9 billion in deposits before they sail. So no, you are not buying a ship. Almost nobody is. You are buying a week on somebody else's tax structure. And by every measure the passengers report, it is a genuinely good week. That is the part the arithmetic never manages to argue with. If this is your kind of arithmetic, I ran the same numbers on an airline. And on a hotel. Both of them are on the channel. Marked up. Real numbers, real sources. $1,300 for the cabin. $455 of it never leaves the ship.